Hey everybody, welcome to my second video in the new bi-weekly series titled The Averill Family from Chipping Norton to Ipswich and Beyond, Lives Recast. 2 weeks ago, I spoke about what William had of his parents at their deaths and how his estate may have dwindled upon his relocation to New England. Here's a summary. Edward Averill had risen to civic respectability in England, serving as burgess when the town was incorporated, while his son William carried on that tradition as bailiff in 1634. Father and son were counted among the town's leaders, their roles giving them both dignity and influence. But when William crossed to Massachusetts, the measure of status shifted. Though once entrusted with authority, he never became a free man in Ipswich and had no say in town government. What had been a respected lineage in England became a far more modest one in New England, where prestige did not automatically survive the Atlantic crossing. A look at William's inheritance from his mother, Judith, underscores the transformation. Her 1618 inventory reveals a household of modest prosperity, brass and pewter goods, beds, clothing, horse gear, most of which was carefully distributed amongst her children. William, though inheriting fewer luxury items, received practical tools and supplies such as a malt mill, horse furniture, brewing equipment, and even a halberd. That reflected both utility and responsibility. Yet by the time William's estate was inventoried decades later in Massachusetts, nearly all of these possessions were gone. Some may have been sold to fund emigration, others lost, consumed, or abandoned in the struggle of colonial life. The decline in material wealth tells a quiet story of hardship, but also of endurance, as William carved out a future for his family in a land where old privileges no longer held sway. Here is my reflection this week based on the current resources that I have. This narrative will probably change with corrections as my research broadens. After the move to New England, William Averill was remembered as a man of thrift. Some would have called him frugal. Others would have called him downright stingy, for the fare on his table was plain and unadorned, little more than the necessities. In his will, he admitted openly that his estate was small. He left behind a modest house and house lot, 10 acres of upland, 6 acres of meadow, and a handful of livestock, such as cows and young pigs. His household goods were equally simple: a few pots, a couple of chests, a couple of beds, sheets, coats, and a scatter of cooking and farming implements: a frying pan, kettle, warming pan, pails, hooks, and even a corselet, which was a relic of older times when men kept armor against uncertainty. It was a modest showing, the mark of a family that lived carefully within its means. But when Abigail, William's widow, passed a couple of years later, the Averill inventory had grown noticeably richer. Her estate listed not only additional land, at least 7 acres known as the Pequot lot, but also more livestock, such as a steer, a calf, and 11 fowl, to name a few. There were new implements, such as a swivel, a ripping hook, a pair of scales with a pound weight, probably a brass funnel, and even a bar of iron. And household comforts had increased too: a clock, a covering called a should, handkerchiefs, and a ring. They had accumulated more wood, 80 feet of board, more grain, 22 bushels of Indian corn, and wheat. Some of these items might have been Abigail's all along, things William did not see fit to list in his own estate. And I do have to research this a little bit more carefully, but there could be the case where the law in many cases might have separated his property from hers, but that needs more research again. Yet the timing of this increase in quote-unquote wealth or inventory raises a very fair question. How did the family's holdings expand between William's passing and Abigail's? One clue lies with their unmarried son, William, who at 28 years old, was still living at home. A man of that age in New England could expect to shoulder much of the farm's work. He may have raised the calf, tended the steer, or bartered for the fowls. The brass funnel, the bar of iron, and even the scales suggest the hand of someone engaging more and actively in trade or husbandry than his own father had. The clock and the ring may hint at Abigail's own possessions, but the increase in livestock and provisions points toward the steady labor of a grown son keeping the household afloat. As for the high probability that William the Younger increased the wealth of the family before his mother died, farming families of the 17th century depended on adult children for labor, and an unmarried son was often the backbone of a widow's support. His daily efforts in tending fields, managing animals, and perhaps pursuing small trades likely explain much of the expansion seen in Abigail's inventory. Without him, it is doubtful the Averill estate would have grown as it did in just a few short years. However, again, more research will be done. Stay tuned for next episode to be uploaded on October 1st, when I will discuss more about William Jr.'s influence on the expanding Averill social economic status. And next week's misconception video to be uploaded on October 1st will be about a misconception that I myself have perpetrated over the years, and how sometimes those of us in this field are willing to admit our mistakes and how we go about correcting them. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.